Welcome to Cupid's Manhwa, today's exploration of the captivating tale, Shallow Kiss and Deep Love. The girl was utterly pitiful, her fiancé and her best friend conspired to dig out her heart. She thought her tragic life would end there, but instead, she was reborn as the notorious and carefree heiress, Lu Jiu. Determined to take revenge, she married Li Beichen, a man rumored to be violent and short-lived. Under her influence, Li Beichen transformed from an uncontrollable tyrant into a devoted and affectionate husband. As they pursued vengeance together, their love story unfolded sweetly along the way. The story begins with the girl strapped to an operating table. Her fiancé, Mu Xiaoqing, instructed the nurse beside him, send a critical condition notice to Su Manhua's family. After she dies, donate her heart to Zhongwani. Su Manhua struggled against the restraints, her breath ragged. Mu Xiaoqing, let me go. I've treated you so well, why are you doing this? Mu Xiaoqing chuckled coldly, trailing a finger along the edge of a scalpel. Because Wani said the heart that once loved me is filthy. She got jealous, so I have to cut it out and feed it to the dogs. As he picked up the scalpel, a woman walked in. It was none other than the girl's best friend, Zhongwani. Xiaoqing, step aside. Let me handle this. No need to dirty your hands. Mu Xiaoqing gave her a fond look, passing her the scalpel without hesitation. All right, Wani. Be careful not to get that wench's filthy blood on you. Their intimate exchange ignited the girl's fury. Su Manhua roared, you despicable pair of traitors. You'll die horrible deaths. Zhongwani laughed, tilting her head mockingly. Why so angry, Manhua? I haven't even told you yet, your mom and dad? Xiaoqing and I killed them. And your little brother who drowned at sea? That was us, too. You thought Gu Tingshan was responsible, didn't you? She leaned in, her voice dripping with malice. And not just that, you even married your family's murderer and handed over the Su Corporation to him. Doesn't that make you even more furious? Hearing this string of shocking revelations, Su Manhua completely lost control. She screamed, I'm going to kill you. But with both hands bound, she was helpless. Zhongwani pressed an oxygen mask over her face and sneered, save your strength. There's still more fun to come. I want you to hate us so much that you'll turn into a vengeful ghost and come after us in death. A voice recorder was turned on, playing a message. I, Su Manhua, hereby declare in my will that all my assets will be left to Mu Xiaoqing. The girl was stunned. Why did the voice on the recording sound exactly like hers? Zhongwani smirked. You've always been curious about my profession, haven't you? Well, let me tell you, I'm actually a voice actor. I've spent 10 years perfecting my skills just for this moment. Now, I can mimic your voice flawlessly. She added with a sneer, not only that, but I'll also use your voice to make a dying wish, asking Gu Tingshan to marry me. How fitting, don't you think? Enraged by their cruelty, adrenaline surged through the girl's body. With a sudden burst of strength, Su Manhua broke free from the restraints. You venomous woman! I'll kill you, she roared. Zhongwani laughed mockingly. With the state you're in? You think you can kill me? Go ahead, scream, struggle all you want. Your husband, your family, everything you held dear was nothing more than a stepping stone for me. From today onward, your so-called wealth and status belong to me. With that, she picked up a scalpel and stabbed down. The girl's vision darkened. When she woke up, she found herself in a completely different body. She was now Lu Jiu, the infamous eldest daughter of the powerful Lu family in Feng City. Rumor had it that Lu Jiu was a lawless troublemaker, an unrivaled delinquent feared throughout Feng City. She was known for her sharp wit and ruthless tactics. But why was she waking up in a hospital bed? She sat up and asked, what happened last night? Lu Jiu's father glared at her. You still have the audacity to ask? Last night, you refused to marry Li Beichen and tried to escape. You fell into the river, and the doctors barely managed to save you. As he spoke, the television in the room caught everyone's attention. A news report flashed on the screen. Breaking news, Su Manhua, heiress of the Su family, has passed away from a critical illness. Her fortune has been left to her fiancé, Mu Xiaoqing. On the screen, Mu Xiaoqing put on a grieving act, his face full of fake sorrow. I won't change the Su Corporation's name. It's the only proof that Manhua once existed in this world. I loved her dearly. For the next 3 years, I will not consider marriage. Lu Jiu clenched her fists in fury. Just wait, I'll make you all pay with a storm of vengeance. Xiaojiu, your father is doing this for your own good. Li Beichen may be violent and only have a year left to live, but he's also the wealthiest man in Feng City. Once he dies, you'll be Mrs. Li, living a life of luxury without a care in the world. Isn't that much better than wasting your time supporting some pretty-faced gigolos? Hearing her father's words, the girl didn't resist. Instead, she replied coldly, "Tell the servants to notify me when the Li family's car arrives." Her father was relieved to hear her agreement and quickly ordered, "Call the Li family and arrange for her to be sent over tonight." In the Great Xia nation, two major financial conglomerates dominated the scene, the Gu family in the north and the Li family in the south. If she wanted revenge, she needed the power and influence of the Li family's young madam to stand against her enemies. Everyone said Li Beichen was a violent madman and a short-lived ghost, but if he could help her get revenge, she didn't care about anything else. That evening, outside the villa, Lu Jiu stepped out gracefully, dressed impeccably. The Li family's butler stood by the car and greeted her, "Young madam, please get in." With an icy expression, Lu Jiu responded, "Let's go." Her father, seeing her completely ignoring him, immediately lost his temper. "You ungrateful girl. You can't even say goodbye to your own father?" Meanwhile, Li Beichen stood by the window, deep in thought. The butler knocked and announced, "Young madam has arrived." Li Beichen turned his head slightly and said, "Let her in." Lu Jiu entered cautiously, greeting him with measured politeness, only to be met with a fist the size of a sandbag swinging straight at her. She instinctively dodged, confirming in her mind, this man really was as violent as the rumors said. Without hesitation, Lu Jiu caught his fist midair and drove her knee toward his stomach. She swiftly grabbed his tie and yanked him back, easily subduing him. "Behave yourself, Mr. Li. I'm the only one who can cure your poison." Li Beichen immediately assumed she had poisoned him. His expression darkened as he struggled free and pinned her beneath him. "I underestimated you," he sneered. "You really went this far just to cling to the Li family? Drugging my food." Lu Jiu tried to explain, but he wrapped his hands around her throat, cutting her off. "What a shame," he murmured coldly. "If my body didn't need you, I'd rather share my bed with a corpse." Lu Jiu scoffed. "Do you really have the heart to kill me?" Li Beichen sneered. "That trick won't work on me." "Oh? How about this one?" Without hesitation, Lu Jiu spit out a thin needle from her mouth and pressed it against his neck. "Care to guess whether I'm faster with my mouth or you're faster with your hands? Besides, the poison I mentioned isn't the kind of filth you're imagining." Li Beichen's wariness eased slightly, and he loosened his grip on her throat. "What do you mean?" Lu Jiu smirked. "I'd say for at least 15 years, you've suffered from insomnia, violent outbursts, and worsening aggression. If you don't get treated within a year, you'll be dead." Li Beichen froze. "How do you know that? You're not Lu Jiu, who the hell are you?" Lu Jiu shrugged. "Does it really matter? The only thing you need to know is that I'm the only one who can save you." Li Beichen scoffed. "And I'm supposed to trust you? A spoiled socialite who spends her days pampering young lovers." Lu Jiu remained confident. "Just follow my instructions. I'll make sure you get a good night's sleep tonight. First, prepare a set of silver needles. Then, get some hahuan bark and sour jujube seeds." Hearing her list, Li Beichen's expression darkened. "Those are all kidney-strengthening remedies. Are you implying that I'm lacking?" Lu Jiu gave him an indifferent look. "Take it or leave it. But if the treatment fails, don't blame my medical skills." Li Beichen clenched his jaw but eventually relented. "Fine. Let's see what tricks you're playing." Later that night, after bathing, Li Beichen strode into the bedroom with a scowl. "Can we get this over with already?" But as he looked up at Lu Jiu, he suddenly noticed her stunning figure. His mind wandered. First the kidney tonics, now the bath, and she's even dressed like that? Is she planning to drain me dry? Lu Jiu noticed him spacing out and urged, "Drink the medicine." "I'm starting now." Li Beichen tensed at her urgency, but before he could react, Lu Jiu shoved him down. "A little wolf like you in my hands? I'll make sure you can't get enough." Then she swiftly pulled out a needle, swiftly stabbing it into his abdomen. In no time, his well-defined abs were covered in acupuncture needles. Li Beichen, who hadn't had a good night's sleep in ages, suddenly felt drowsy. Noticing this, he couldn't help but wonder, did this woman actually know medicine? Hearing his doubts, memories of her past life flooded Lu Jiu's mind. She had been taught ancient medical arts by her master and treated like a daughter, yet she had once thrown it all away for a worthless man. For Mu Xiaocheng, she had concealed her identity as the heir to a prestigious medical lineage and willingly became his pawn. But now, Su Manhua was dead, and Zhong Wanyi would surely take advantage of her inability to reveal her true identity to steal her place. Too bad for her, titles could be stolen, but skills could not. Reborn as Lu Jiu, she vowed to take back everything those treacherous lovers had taken from her, one step at a time. Just as she was about to deliver the final needle, Li Beichen grabbed her wrist. Perhaps he had noticed the change in her gaze, because he suddenly flipped her over and pinned her down. What were you just thinking about? Your eyes were filled with resentment and helplessness. I won't let anyone bully my woman. Tell me, who wronged you? For a brief moment, Lu Jiu was caught off guard. Despite this being a forced marriage, this man actually seemed protective. When she didn't answer, Li Beichen's patience wore thin. Spill it, Mrs. Li, otherwise, I can't guarantee what I might do. Lu Jiu immediately replied, it's nothing. Just let me finish the last needle. But Li Beichen had no intention of letting her go. Holding her close, he leaned in, his actions growing increasingly intimate. That night, the newlyweds went all out. Meanwhile, Lu Jiu's younger sister, Lu Xinyue, was up to no good again. She deliberately called Lu Jiu's former lover and informed him that her sister had married Li Beichen, the infamous brute of Feng City. She even pleaded with him to check on Lu Jiu, reminding him that her sister had once been deeply devoted to him. After executing her plan, Lu Xinyue flashed a wicked smile. Let's see how you dare to stay in the Li family now. The next morning, Lu Jiu was fast asleep in Li Beichen's arms when a knock at the door startled her awake. Half asleep, she groggily asked, "Who is it?" The butler's voice came from outside. "Young madam, the master invites you and the young master downstairs for breakfast." Still drowsy, Lu Jiu momentarily forgot where she was. She grumbled, "Young madam? What nonsense is that?" But before she could finish complaining, Li Beichen suddenly pulled her into his embrace. The heat radiating from his body jolted her awake, making her realize she was still at the Li estate. She struggled and protested, "Let me go. Someone's knocking." But Li Beichen remained unfazed, tightening his hold on her and continuing to sleep. Outside the door, the old master and a butler exchanged awkward glances, their faces flushing at the couple's shameless flirting. "Let's go. We shouldn't interrupt," the old master muttered. The butler nodded with a knowing smile. "With how things are going, I bet you'll be holding a great-grandchild soon." A moment later, they finally got up and made their way to the dining room, where the old master had been waiting. Feeling a bit shy, Lu Jiu apologized, "Sorry, Grandpa, we woke up late." The old master, basking in the joy of future great-grandchildren, chuckled warmly. "Not late at all. Breakfast is just in time." He even made sure to pile food onto Lu Jiu's plate. "Eat more. I see you as my own granddaughter." Hearing that, Li Beichen immediately protested. "If she's your granddaughter, then what am I? Adopted." The old master ignored him and continued speaking to Lu Jiu. "If Beichen ever mistreats you, just tell Grandpa." Lu Jiu was taken aback. She hadn't expected the head of the Li family to value her so much. Blushing slightly, she replied, "Thank you, Grandpa." But the peaceful moment didn't last long. Suddenly, a man barged into the house, shouting for Lu Jiu. The butler tried to stop him, but the intruder pushed past, causing a commotion loud enough to disrupt the three at the dining table. It was Hu Jiangdong. Everyone was stunned. Hu Jiangdong, known for his countless lovers and his obsession with the former Lu Jiu, had once let her drown without lifting a finger. If he had saved her that day, the old Lu Jiu wouldn't have died, and she wouldn't be here now, inhabiting this body. A storm of emotion surged within her. Li Beichen's face was full of jealousy as he glared at Lu Jiu's former true love. Stepping in front of her, he declared his claim. "What business do you have with my wife?" He was ready for any conflict that might arise. Lu Jiu, however, pushed her husband aside. "This is my own matter. You don't need to interfere, I'll handle it myself." Hu Jiangdong mistook her actions as a sign of protection and was just about to approach her when Lu Jiu swiftly stopped him. "Mr. Hua, if you have something to say, say it. Otherwise, my husband won't be happy." "Xiao Jiu, I came to take you away," Hu Jiangdong stated firmly. Even if I don't love you, you shouldn't just throw yourself away by marrying a lunatic like Li Beichen. He openly slandered her husband. Lu Jiu's expression darkened. Mr. Hua, if you keep spewing nonsense, I won't be so polite. Unfazed, Hua Jiangdong grabbed her arm, his voice growing more desperate. Do you know how many women he's hurt when he loses control? And on top of that, he doesn't have much time left. Do you really want to be a widow for the rest of your life? As he tried to pull her away, their struggle caused her clothes to tear, exposing the marks on her skin. Seeing the injuries, Hua Jiangdong became even more convinced that she was being abused by the Li family. He really did hurt you. You have to leave with me today. Lu Jiu attempted to explain that the marks had nothing to do with violence, but he refused to believe her. Left with no other choice, she wrapped her arms around her husband and leaned in suggestively. Mr. Hua, we're all adults here. Surely you know how I got these marks, don't you? The realization hit Hua Jiangdong like a punch to the gut. Watching her stand so intimately with Li Beichen, an overwhelming bitterness filled his heart. Yet, despite the pain, he remained stubborn. I don't care what happened. You're coming with me. Lu Jiu's eyes turned cold. Mr. Hua, did you barge into my home just to say this? And tell me, in what capacity do you think you can take me away now? Lu Jiu's words stunned Hua Jiangdong. He suddenly realized that the woman before him was no longer the same Xiao Jiu he once knew. Panicked at the thought of losing her, he desperately clung to her, refusing to let go. As long as you come with me, I'll give you a chance, I'll try to love you. Lu Jiu found his words laughable, as if he had just told the biggest joke in the world. Smirking, she replied, Thanks, but I don't need that anymore. Without another word, she grabbed Li Beichen and kissed him in front of everyone. Mr. Hua, you're overthinking things. The Lu Jiu standing before you will always be Mrs. Li. The only man I love is Li Beichen. As for the Lu Jiu who once loved you, she's already dead. But Hua Jiangdong refused to believe it. Lu Jiu had no interest in arguing further and turned to head upstairs. Just as he was about to chase after her, Li Beichen blocked his path. My wife's conversation with you is over. Now, it's my turn to talk. The moment he finished speaking, a group of men surrounded Hua Jiangdong. Within minutes, the villa echoed with the sound of agonized screams. Meanwhile, still fuming, Lu Jiu headed to the courtyard to practice her martial arts. Her movements were swift and seamless, leaving Li Beichen watching in suspicion. How could she be this skilled? Sensing someone behind her, Lu Jiu instinctively turned back and lost her balance. But before she could fall, Li Beichen leaped forward, catching her in his arms. With reflexes like that, how did you manage to trip? Were you just looking for an excuse to throw yourself at me? He teased. Lu Jiu's face flushed red with embarrassment. You're so full of yourself. Li Beichen smirked mischievously. Full of myself? I thought you were just rewarding me for dealing with that idiot earlier. Lu Jiu playfully patted his firm arm. Well, I guess that's not entirely out of the question. Just as the atmosphere between them grew more intimate, the phone suddenly rang. Li Beichen, denied the moment he was hoping for, scowled in frustration. The moment Lu Jiu picked up the call, her father's furious voice blasted through the receiver. Xinyue was just trying to help you, yet you bullied her again? When you come home tomorrow, you'd better apologize to her properly. After hanging up, Lu Jiu fell into deep thought. It seemed that this visit home was going to be quite eventful. Sure enough, the next morning, her father was already making a scene. Since when do I, as her father, have to understand her reasoning? She has no sense of respect at all. Lu Xinyue, playing the obedient daughter, stepped forward to mediate. Dad, don't be mad. Now that sister is the Li family's madam, her status is naturally different from before. That only made their father even angrier. Different from before? She's nothing more than a toy someone played with and discarded, yet she dares to put on airs in front of her own father? Just as these words fell, Li Beichen, who had just stepped out of the car, overheard everything. His voice was icy as he spoke. Who said my wife is just a plaything? Lu Jiu is the rightful young madam of the Li family. Anyone who dares to gossip behind her back, I'll make sure they regret it. Faced with this imposing presence, Lu Jiu's father immediately changed his tune, scrambling to please his wealthy son-in-law. Meanwhile, Lu Xinyue, standing to the side, seethed with jealousy. Why was Lu Jiu's luck so good? How did she end up marrying a man as powerful and handsome as Li Beichen? And not only that, He had even lowered himself to accompany her to their insignificant family home. Determined to maintain her innocent image, Lu Xinyue suddenly burst into tears and rushed to Lu Jio's side, sobbing pitifully. "Sister, as long as you're okay, that's all that matters. I never meant to cause you trouble by running away from the engagement. I just didn't want you to do something so dishonorable." Seeing Lu Xinyue weeping like a delicate flower in the rain, Lu Jio was reminded of this body's tragic past. If it hadn't been for Lu Xinyue, the original Lu Jio wouldn't have died. Though she had benefited from it by transmigrating into this body, the pain and suffering the previous owner endured, she would make sure to return every bit of it to Lu Xinyue. Noticing that neither Lu Jio nor Li Beichen reacted to her tears, Lu Xinyue decided to escalate the drama. "I'm sorry. I never expected sister would rather throw herself into the river than marry into the Li family." Hearing this, Lu Jio didn't hold back. "Oh, so that's what you're apologizing for? I thought you were finally going to apologize for pushing me into the river." Lu Xinyue panicked. "Sister, what are you talking about?" Uninterested in watching her act like an innocent victim, Lu Jio simply kicked her into the pond. "A mere illegitimate daughter like you dares to call me sister? How does it feel, Lu Xinyue? Do you finally understand what I went through that day? Don't worry, I'll make sure you pay back every bit of what you owe me." Terrified, Lu Xinyue dared not utter a word. Meanwhile, Li Beichen pulled out a handkerchief and carefully wiped Lu Jio's hands. "You're an adult, yet you're still touching such filthy things." His unexpected intimacy made Lu Jio blush. "We're at the Lu family home, watch your image." Li Beichen remained unfazed. "And? Is the Lu family some kind of big deal? I'll be affectionate with my wife however I please, who here dares to object?" Lu Jio's father, eager to appease him, quickly flattered, "Of course not. This is Xiaojio's home, you're welcome to do as you please. Xinyue and I have been looking forward to your visit." Lu Jio scoffed. "Looking forward to me apologizing, you mean? Lu Xinyue was the one trying to stir trouble between me and my husband, yet my own father only knows how to force me to apologize." Her father hurriedly tried to explain, "That's not what I meant. Besides, isn't your relationship with President Li doing just fine?" Seeing the argument reaching a deadlock, Lu Xinyue suddenly dropped to her knees with a loud thud. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I knew sister liked Jiangdong, so I wanted to step aside for her. To make up for my mistake, I'm willing to marry into the Li family in her place." As she spoke, she even shot a seductive glance at Li Beichen. Lu Jianming panicked upon hearing this. "Xinyue, what nonsense are you spouting? How could I let you go to the Li family and throw your life away?" Li Beichen's expression instantly darkened, prompting Lu Jianming to hastily clarify that he didn't mean it that way. Seizing the opportunity, Lu Xinyue crawled toward Li Beichen. It was sister who brought up the idea of switching brides in the first place. Before she ran away from the wedding, she forced me to take her place. I didn't dare deceive the Li family, so sister even kicked me out. Her tearful, pitiful expression was enough to evoke sympathy. Li Beichen turned to his wife with a sharp gaze. "So, you really wanted nothing to do with marrying me?" Lu Jio had long seen through Lu Xinyue's tricks. She smirked. "Whether I wanted to or not is another matter. What I do know is that right now, she desperately wants to marry you." Then, she added teasingly, "I could agree to step aside, but do you think she's even worthy of you?" Lu Xinyue, still playing the pitiful role, feigned humility. "I wouldn't dare dream of winning young Master Li's favor. I only wish to stay by your side. That alone would make my life complete." Li Beichen felt utterly disgusted by her act and was just about to reject her outright when Lu Jio suddenly grabbed his arm, stopping him. She cast him a playful wink. "She makes a good point." Li Beichen instantly caught onto his wife's intentions. "If you want my help, you'll have to make it up to me later," he murmured. Hearing his suggestive tone, Lu Jio's mind was instantly flooded with all sorts of explicit scenarios. It seemed tonight would be anything but peaceful. Li Beichen leaned in slightly, his voice laced with amusement. "You want to take her place? The Li family isn't a place just anyone can enter. If you want to marry me, you'll have to agree to my terms." Thinking she had finally gotten her chance, Lu Xinyue immediately agreed without hesitation. But as she watched the affectionate interaction between Lu Jio and Li Beichen, a pang of jealousy flared in her heart. "Once I marry into the Li family, I'll make sure to steal him away from my sister." Li Beichen ordered the butler to make arrangements, and before long, a group of men dressed in white, carrying a coffin, approached Lu Xinyue. "I'm infamous for being a short-lived man," Li Beichen said coolly. "If you want to marry me, you'll have to get in the coffin first. After all, you'll be following me for the rest of your life." Lu Xinyue shrieked in terror. "I don't want to marry. I refuse to marry this doomed man." She turned to flee, but Li Beichen swiftly grabbed her back. "You already agreed to my conditions," he said coldly. "There's no turning back now." Panicked, Lu Xinyue turned to her dazed father. "Dad, save me." Lu Jiu sneered. "Save you? No one can save you now, unless I decide to cancel the swap." Hearing this, Lu Xinyue immediately dropped to her knees, surrendering. "Please, let me go. I'll do anything." Lu Jiu smirked. "Unless you confess 3 things you've done to wrong me and then kneel and apologize properly, you're still set to marry into the Li family, to your grave." She began counting. 1, 2. Seeing Lu Xinyue's unwavering stance, Li Beichen's patience began to wear thin. "Hurry up," he urged. "My family's coffin is waiting for you." Terrified, Lu Xinyue finally caved. She started listing her past misdeeds while banging her head against the floor in repentance. "When I was 12, I framed you for stealing money and made Dad abandon you. When I was 16, I drugged you and secretly took indecent photos to ruin your reputation. On your 18th birthday, I swapped the gift and love letter you prepared for Jiangdong with adult toys. That's why he rejected you." Lu Jianming, their father, was stunned. He couldn't believe his supposedly sweet and obedient daughter had done such cruel, unforgivable things. At that moment, Wu Jiangdong arrived to visit Lu Xinyue and happened to overhear everything. He stared at her in shock. "So it was you all along?" His voice trembled with disbelief. "All these years, I wrongly blamed Xiao Jiu." As her disgraceful deeds were exposed, Lu Xinyue lost control and lunged at Lu Jiu in a frenzy. "You wretch! You set me up!" Before she could reach Lu Jiu, Li Beichen kicked her away, shielding his wife. "Get lost. Stay away from my woman." Hu Jiangdong, still reeling from the revelations, stepped forward with a dazed expression. "Xiao Jiu, is what she said true?" "I don't know, and I don't care." Lu Jiu cut him off coldly, unwilling to waste another word on him. She turned and walked away. "If you want answers, ask her yourself. And from now on, don't bother me again." Watching her retreating figure, Wu Jiangdong felt as if a knife was twisting in his heart. Meanwhile, Lu Xinyue, realizing she had lost the man she loved forever, collapsed to her knees, begging desperately. After a long, exhausting day, Lu Jiu returned to the Li residence, already planning her next steps. Severing Lu Xinyue and Lu Jianming's father-daughter bond was just the beginning. Next, she needed to take back control of the Lu Corporation. Otherwise, dealing with those 2 scumbags would be much harder. Lost in thought, she was suddenly pulled back to reality when Li Beichen pressed up behind her. "What are you thinking about?" Lu Jiu opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, Li Beichen silenced her in his usual domineering way, by claiming her lips. "You promised to make it up to me today," he murmured, his hands roaming over her body. Startled, Lu Jiu yelped, "Stop. Someone might see us." But Li Beichen, already burning with desire, didn't care. "Let them. I want the whole world to know you belong to me." Just as things were heating up in the living room, a news report suddenly caught Lu Jiu's attention. The world-renowned jewelry designer Swan is finally revealing her true identity. Her masterpiece, the Destiny Diamond Ring, is set to go up for auction soon. Lu Jiu's anger surged instantly upon hearing the news. Swan was the pen name she had used in the past as a designer, and Destiny was a piece she had poured her heart and soul into. Yet now, they dared to auction it off. At the auction, Lu Jiu entered arm in arm with Li Beichen, instantly becoming the center of attention. The crowd buzzed with speculation. Li Beichen actually brought that scandalous woman with him? Hearing the whispers, Lu Jiu turned to her husband and asked sarcastically, "This auction is the biggest social event for political and business elites. Aren't you afraid I'll embarrass you?" Li Beichen looked at her in confusion. "Why would my wife embarrass me? Besides, what others think has nothing to do with me." As the event neared its end, the host introduced the final item up for bidding, Swan's masterpiece, the Destiny Diamond Ring. Lu Jiu could no longer remain calm. That ring was something she had painstakingly designed back then, symbolizing her love with Mu Xiaocheng. She had deliberately used the pen name Swan when publishing her work in English, incorporating both her name and Zhongwani's as a tribute to their friendship. She had once believed that her destiny would be filled with happiness, surrounded by her lover and best friend. Yet now, that so-called destiny had turned into nothing but betrayal. Watching Zhongwani take the stage, basking in the glory that wasn't hers, Lu Jiu seethed with rage. Zhongwani addressed the audience with a sorrowful expression. The destiny ring was a collaboration between my dear friend Su Manhua and me. She has since passed away, but before she left, she gave me her heart, literally, allowing me to live on. To honor her memory, I will donate all proceeds from this auction. From now on, the identity of Swan will belong to her. I will retire from designing forever. The crowd erupted in shock. This can't be real. I love Swan's designs. Lu Jiu let out a cold laugh. Such a touching speech. But at the end of the day, it's just a defective piece. A die-hard fan immediately jumped to Zhongwani's defense, scoffing, "This is an Swan masterpiece. Miss Lu should stick to picking out pretty boys at nightclubs instead of embarrassing herself here." Lu Jiu remained unfazed. So what if it's an Swan piece? This was just an early work. The primary gemstone's cutting angles are flawed. The woman refuted her again. Flawed? You're just jealous of Miss Zhong and pretending to know better. Feigning innocence, Zhongwani spoke up. This ring was designed as my own wedding ring, and I poured my heart into it. Miss Lu, you may not like my design, but you have no right to slander me. Lu Jiu let out a cold laugh. Slander? Let's see about that. She strode up to the stage. She pointed at the ring. The primary gemstone has a cutting flaw, the facets are uneven and asymmetrical. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Lu Jiu continued, in terms of craftsmanship, this isn't even Swan's best work. And yet, you honor your dear friend with a defective piece? Some friendship, that is. Zhongwani stared at Lu Jiu in shock. How did she know that? Curious onlookers rushed forward to examine the ring, and sure enough, they found the flaw just as Lu Jiu described. Gasps filled the room. Swan, how could you not know about this issue? Someone questioned. Lu Jiu smirked. Not know? I'd say she just wanted to use this as an opportunity to offload a defective product. Li Beichen was stunned by his wife's keen eye. You actually know this much about jewelry design? Lu Jiu froze. Damn, she had been so focused on humiliating Zhongwani that she'd let her knowledge slip. Would this expose her? She quickly tried to downplay it. Women like jewelry, so naturally, we learn a little more about it. Thanks to her remarks, the excitement around the auction quickly faded. No one was interested in bidding on a flawed ring anymore. Zhongwani shot Lu Jiu a vicious glare. This woman, why was she just as infuriating as Su Manhua? Seeing that no one was bidding, Zhongwani hastily tried to explain, I never meant to deceive anyone. This is my wedding ring, it holds great sentimental value. I only hoped it could bring happiness to others. But her explanation felt weak, and the room remained eerily silent. Just then, a deep, commanding voice rang out from the crowd. 10 billion. Gasps rippled through the audience as the bidder continued. If it makes my wife happy, I don't mind spending a fortune. 11 billion, I must have this ring. Lu Jiu's eyes widened in panic. Did you not hear a word I just said? That ring is defective. But Li Beichen had already stepped into his domineering CEO persona. All I saw was you staring at it. If you like something, then I'll make sure you have it, no matter the cost. Warmth surged in Lu Jiu's chest. So there was still someone who cared about her feelings. Looking at her husband's handsome face, she couldn't hold back, she kissed him on the spot. With the love of her life by her side, Lu Jiu resolved to let go of the past and take control of her own destiny. Back home, after an intense night, Li Beichen still wasn't sleeping soundly. Lu Jiu watched him with concern. She needed to find a way to purge the poison from his body, fast. Determined, she picked up her phone and sent a message. At 7 p.m., the club known as Allure and Enchantment was bustling, the pounding music making Lu Jiu uneasy. Suddenly, a flamboyantly dressed young man with dyed yellow hair wrapped an arm around hers. Lu Jiu. It's really you. You haven't been around in ages, I've missed you to death. Lu Jiu recoiled in disgust. Who are you? I don't know you. Let go. The blonde man pouted dramatically. You don't remember me? That really hurts, babe. Lu Jiao had no patience for this and turned to leave, but the man's playful act quickly faded into something more impatient. You covered my expenses for over 6 months. You promised to buy me a Rolex, you can't just pretend I don't exist now. The moment Lu Jiao heard the man's words, she immediately realized this was yet another romantic debt left behind by the original host. She snapped angrily, I'm married now. My husband is super strict, let go of me, or he'll beat you to death. The blonde man, however, was unfazed. He pouted flirtatiously, trying to act cute. Come on, sis, give me another chance? We can do whatever you want. Lu Jiao felt embarrassed by his shamelessness. Distracted, she lost her balance and stumbled backward, right into Yun Sheng. But the moment he saw her face, his expression twisted with disgust. So it's you, Lu Jiao? Even if you've dressed all innocent now, I still wouldn't want to be with you. Lu Jiao pinched the bridge of her nose in frustration. Just how many loose ends had the original host left behind? To make Yun Sheng recognize her identity, she didn't hesitate, she grabbed him and flipped him over her shoulder in a swift takedown. Disrespecting your master deserves punishment. Yun Sheng was utterly dumbfounded. Master? What are you talking about? 3 years ago, Yun Sheng had joined the Gui sect and was placed under Lu Jiao's tutelage. To keep her identity hidden, she had always taught him online, so he had never seen her face before. Now that he finally understood, Yun Sheng blushed and awkwardly apologized. I'm sorry, I had no idea you were my master, Lady Lu. Lu Jiao waved him off. Forget it. You weren't entirely at fault today. But Yun Sheng's expression suddenly turned admiring. Since you're my master, then I'm willing to be your man. Lu Jiao nearly choked on her drink, spraying it everywhere. I'm married. Yet Yun Sheng clung to her leg stubbornly. Then I'll be your lover instead. Fed up, Lu Jiao gave him a swift beating. Still joking, huh? After dealing with him, she pulled out a small bag of medicinal powder. Help me analyze the ingredients in this, I need the results by tomorrow. Yun Sheng was puzzled as to why his master didn't analyze the powder herself. Hearing this, Lu Jiao fell into deep thought. How can I go back like this? There's a good chance Zhongwani has already taken over my identity. After weighing her options, she casually made up an excuse. I have some matters to attend to and won't be able to return to Gui sect for the time being. Remember, don't let a third person know about this request. Just as Li Beichen arrived home, Lu Jiao walked out of the kitchen carrying a bowl of noodles. You're back. I made some noodles, come and eat. Li Beichen replied coldly, no need. Then, without another word, he played an audio recording. Lu Jiao frowned in confusion. What's going on? From the recording, a man's flirtatious voice echoed, Lu Jiao. It's really you. You haven't been around in ages, I've missed you to death. You covered my expenses for over 6 months. You promised to buy me a Rolex, you can't just pretend I don't exist now. Hearing the shameless words laced with filth, Li Beichen's expression darkened instantly. Lu Jiao froze. Wait a minute, aren't these the exact words that Gigolo said to me today? How did someone record them and send them to him? Seeing his wife's silence, Li Beichen's jealousy flared. He practically jumped in frustration. So you really went to allure and enchantment? Am I not satisfying enough for you? You still have the energy to find a gigolo? Lu Jiao hurriedly tried to explain, but Li Beichen, blinded by jealousy, refused to listen. He domineeringly pressed her down. Fine, let's settle it right here. I'll make sure everyone knows you belong to me. Panicking, Lu Jiao struggled. Are you crazy? As they wrestled, the recording continued to play, right to the part where Lu Jiao had snapped, I'm married now. My husband is super strict, let go of me, or he'll beat you to death. Li Beichen's mind went blank. Lu Jiao scoffed, you didn't even listen to the whole thing before throwing a fit and trying to force yourself on me? With a swift movement, she flipped them over, straddling him. Now, tell me, where did you get that recording? Li Beichen couldn't resist the pressure and finally admitted that he had sent people to follow his wife. I was just worried about your safety. You're the young madam of the Li family, how could you go around without protection? Hearing this, Lu Jiao felt a pang of disappointment. So after everything, you still don't trust me at all? Li Beichen immediately grabbed her hand, but Lu Jiao shot him a fierce glare. What are you doing? Realizing that force wouldn't work, he decided to take a different approach. With practiced ease, he began unbuttoning his shirt, revealing his toned body to his wife. "You like handsome men, don't you? Well, I'm offering myself to you. From now on, the most beautiful man in Feng City is me, so stop going to places like Allure and Enchantment." Lu Jio's face turned red. Since when did this guy learn to seduce me like this? She quickly placed her hands on his chest and gave him a gentle shove. "Stop messing around and go eat your noodles, I made them just for you." Li Beichen reluctantly buttoned his shirt and obediently sat at the table. "Other than my grandfather, no one has ever cooked for me before." With anticipation, Lu Jio lifted the lid off the bowl, revealing a pot of pitch-black noodles. Li Beichen hesitated. "How am I supposed to eat this?" Awkwardly, he muttered, "I'm not really hungry." But Lu Jio wasn't having it. "Eat up before it gets cold." Not wanting to disappoint her, Li Beichen braced himself, shut his eyes, and took a big bite. The taste was indescribable. It was bizarre, but he forced himself to swallow. "It's delicious." Hearing her husband praise her cooking, Lu Jio beamed. "If it's good, then eat more. Don't waste it, finish the whole bowl." At that moment, Li Beichen desperately wished for someone, anyone, to come and save him. Suddenly, a phone rang. Lu Jio picked up, her brows furrowing as she listened. On the other end, a pleading voice said, "Xiao Jiu, I'm begging you, please come to the hospital." Noticing his wife's troubled expression, Li Beichen grew concerned. "Did something happen? My grandma is asking me to go to the hospital." "I don't know if she's sick," Lu Jio replied, already rushing out the door. Li Beichen gently reassured her, "Don't worry, everything will be fine." At the hospital, Lu Xinyue was sobbing uncontrollably. "Dad is seriously injured, and she didn't even bother to visit." Hearing this, Lu Jianming erupted in anger. "That ungrateful, what, is she waiting for me to die before?" Before he could finish, the elderly matriarch stepped in, cutting him off. "Enough. Xiao Jiu will be here soon. Do you want to upset her the moment she arrives?" Lu Xinyue, however, sneered sarcastically, "Grandma, you always take Lu Jio's side. But why should she care? She's happily married now, probably too busy enjoying her new life to be bothered by something so trivial." The old lady was taken aback. "Married? Why hasn't anyone told me who she married?" Just then, Lu Jio arrived at the door and overheard everything. Without hesitation, she stated firmly, "My husband is Li Beichen." The moment those words left her lips, the elderly woman's expression changed drastically. "What? You married that lunatic?" Without another word, she grabbed Lu Jio's hand, determined to march her straight to the Li family to demand a divorce. Lu Jio, however, remained patient and explained, "Grandma, Li Beichen isn't the monster people think he is. We're doing well together." The old lady let out a heavy sigh. "Fine. But that's not why I called you here." Throughout the conversation, no one had spared a glance at the injured man lying in the hospital bed. Lu Jianming, frustrated, grumbled, "So what, I'm not allowed to call you home unless it's an emergency." Lu Xinyue, eager to stir up trouble, smirked. "Sister, you should at least visit once in a while. Or did you not even know that father was seriously injured?" Hearing that, Lu Jio let out a cold laugh. "Oh? So father was badly injured, yet no one bothered to inform me." Lu Jianming was so furious that he nearly jumped in anger. The elderly matriarch quickly intervened, trying to calm him down. "Don't blame him. A few days ago, he was hit by a falling steel rod from a construction site. It pierced his lower leg. The doctors say he might never walk again. He was probably too overwhelmed to inform you." Lu Xinyue, however, bared her teeth like a wildcat, seizing the opportunity to accuse her. "The moment you left the Lu family, Dad got into an accident. Who's to say someone didn't bring bad luck back home?" Hearing this, a flicker of doubt crept into Lu Jio's mind. Could Li Beichen have done something? Seeing Lu Jio remain silent, Lu Xinyue raised her voice again. "Dad's in this state, and you haven't even shed a single tear. Do you even have a conscience?" Lu Jio fired back without hesitation. "He's not dead yet. Do you expect me to wail like you at a funeral? Or are you just hoping he kicks the bucket sooner?" Lu Xinyue was left speechless. "I didn't say that. You're making things up." The elderly matriarch, clearly tired of Lu Xinyue's dramatic act, pulled her granddaughter aside. "Xiao Jiu is right. Wipe away those crocodile tears. Your father is still alive, don't jinx it. Now that she's seen him, that's enough." Lu Jiu had no intention of lingering any longer. After bidding her grandmother farewell, she turned to leave. But before she could step out, Lu Xinyue blocked her way. "Did you think we only called you here because of Dad?"